got addicted to the rental game and had one of the worst experiences of my life right there.
You bought the wedding venue off of Zillow?
100% off Zillow. Yes, that's where I first saw it.
That's crazy.
I had a boss ask me to do something which was illegal and told me that if I didn't do it, they were going to find somebody who would. I also got robbed for 6 figures.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Roots podcast. Today we're with someone very special, kind of a mentor in Max and I's life, Nick Giulioni. Nick Giulioni has a background in the tech industry, actually in Silicon Valley, and he worked for Facebook, which became Meta. Before then, investing out of state in Indianapolis, Nick has touched over 200 properties with his personal portfolio and flipping business, and now runs one of the largest contracting businesses in Indianapolis, which has touched well over 400 properties. So, Max, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, super excited to have you on. Nick is also the host of the Indy Investor Speakeasy, which Tyler and I both try to frequent as much as we can.
As much as talk you guys into it.
Yeah, as much as Tyler.
How much my wife will let me get drunk.
That's what I was going to say. How much you can drink during the week. But yeah, I mean, as we just alluded, drinking on there, it's much more laid back over at the Indy Investor Speakeasy. Excited to have you on here and really start to unpack that background. That's crazy. 400 doors for Off-Leash. How old is Off-Leash?
So Off-Leash Construction has actually only been around for a year now. So we've touched a lot of houses and really blessed that we've had that opportunity.
Wow. Off-Leash, obviously a huge partner of Roots and helps us out in many ways. I'd love to start to unpack how your time in the tech industry was in Silicon Valley. Also, your time in the tech industry while being an out-of-state investor.
Yeah.
I think the best way to frame that up is I want to hear what actually led you to move to Indiana.
Yeah. My gosh, it is such a big story and a weird series of events. And what I'm going to hope everybody hears is like the number of just accidents, the number of coincidences that have made my life here and really have encouraged me to develop my roots here. Yeah, I grew up in LA. Like I have no real association with Indianapolis except for a couple of very distant cousins are living out here. Some are in Fort Wayne, some are in Indy. And I actually only visited Indy once before I began investing out here. Went to USC, met the girl of my dreams, married her, and really got into the tech field pretty early. And we ended up kind of doing the house hacking thing. For anybody who's not familiar, that's where you rent out part of your house. It's a really cool opportunity. I got addicted to the whole rental game at that point. I was doing e-commerce sales, wasn't even really in the tech field, but got addicted to the rental game and had one of the worst experiences of my life right there. I had a boss ask me to do something which was illegal and told me that if I didn't do it, they were going to find somebody who would. Despite objectively being a top performer in my company, I was basically told like, hey, do this, otherwise we're going to fire you. And I remember sitting there just crying in the conference room, like trying to figure out how I was going to get out of this because, we just bought our house. And while half of it was being paid for by tenants, like how were we going to pay our mortgage? How were we going to put food on the table? And I found a way out of that situation. And it was really bad. But I knew I needed to find another solution. And I knew that if that ever happened again, I needed to have the self-confidence to choose to walk out the door rather than have that happen. And so began doing a whole lot of research, began listening to a million of these kinds of podcasts, more around the real estate investing specifically, and followed one influencer who was doing a lot of stuff out here. Thankfully, I didn't begin working with him because there were a lot of bad actors here in Indy at that time, and he was one of them, and it's still being tried for all that. But did end up deciding Indy was the market for me. Yeah, there were a lot of great reasons, and we can kind of go into that if you want. A lot of great reasons why Indy was an awesome market to begin investing in, and so I began building my portfolio out here. Really went well. It began to accelerate. But then December 13th, 2019 happened. And that I will always remember that day because my property manager told me that he had just robbed me for 6 figures. He had basically stolen all of my security deposits and had stolen multiple months worth of rent from me. And I was responsible for making sure those tenants were made whole on their security deposits. And there were a lot of issues. And for anybody who's not aware, shortly thereafter, just a couple of months later, the eviction moratorium went into effect. And so all of these poorly trained tenants then didn't have to pay rent. It was a really, really bad situation. Now, at this point in time, my wife and I lived in the Bay Area, and I was working at Facebook Meta, and she was working at another tech company. We got sent home to go work remote for at least 6 months. And so my wife said, hey, like, I know things aren't going well there in Indy. I know that we just got robbed. I know we've got a lot of issues. Do you want to get out there just to get closer to the business and really see if you can get control of it? Because, you know, we were still very much in a recovery stage. Also, we were paying $4,000 a month to live in a shoebox in the Bay Area. And so...
But you were renting out part of.
Oh, you know what? This was actually a different house that we were renting at that point. No, so that was all just going to somebody else's mortgage. And so we ended up coming out here. We got the 2 golden retrievers in the back of the car. And my wife looks at me. She goes, 6 months and not a day longer. She was the one who ended up changing that. We were walking around. We lived in an awesome area of Fishers. The houses kind of sucked, but we were living in an awesome part of Fishers. And we were in some little community where we were walking through, and she goes, "How much is one of those new builds? You know, one of these like $4,000 or 4,000 square foot new builds." And that's when I knew I had her. And so it's been 4.5 years. We bought our dream house, and it's actually the longest we've ever lived in any house that we've been living here in our house in Carmel now. So. How did I get here? Gosh, I don't know. It's just a series of weird accidents, but the best possible accidents I can imagine.
I want to peel back 2 things. One, you mentioned you picked. I imagine you just like looking at a map of the U.S. and being like, where do I want to invest and build this portfolio?
that one.
In the middle of cornfield, you know, U.S.
Threw a bullseye straight in the middle.
Why did you originally decide to get that first deal in Indianapolis of all the options? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah. So, you know, I could say that I had done all the research and I'd really done the comparison between every single market. That's not the case. I'd be lying to you guys. I did have a good enough criteria. And I think that's something that a lot of people that get analysis paralysis don't have, that like, hey, I'm going to find good enough and then stop doing research at that point in time. So I was looking for a good enough cash flow. I also didn't have, this is an expression my grandma used to use, I didn't have a pot to piss in at that point in time. And so I, you know, couldn't afford to go and buy more in California. I couldn't buy in Colorado. I couldn't buy on the East Coast. I needed to find something that was affordable. So my first deal, I think, was $74,000 to purchase. I think it was like $15,000 down or something like that. And so I needed good enough cash flow. I needed it to be affordable. And I wanted to have some idea that it would grow. And then also I was like, all right, I got some family out there. So if I get to go visit them and count it as a business expense, that's a win in my book as well.
I'm curious on house hacking in California.
Yeah.
Was that out of an interest in real estate investing or out of necessity? Did you stumble into it?
Yeah, totally stumbled into it. Wasn't even really listening to podcasts at that point in time. My wife and I were living in a tiny little house. We were paying somebody else's mortgage again. It was like a triplex, fourplex kind of thing. And I just saw what this guy was doing. And I'm like, and my landlord also lived in the house. He was a big old weirdo and not the nicest person in the world. I'm like, well, if this dummy can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
And so figured out the math. Wasn't going to find like a fourplex. It was in kind of a shady area, but you know, we ended up paying the same on net of the rental upstairs in the house to live in a much, much nicer area that there's no way we could have afforded to live in Laguna Hills without the house hacking. It completely changed what was possible for us. And honestly, probably set us on a path that was much more expensive because our quality of life expectations went up big time by doing the house hacking thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm always curious on that because I feel like you also kind of stumbled into it, not really looking at it from a place of investing, but like necessity or the disgust of paying somebody else's mortgage, not wanting to pay rent. Like for me, that's how I stumbled into house hacking. Is apartment, had a terrible experience, flooded 4 times, paid way too much money for a 19-year-old to live somewhere. And I'm like, why don't I just go get a house where like I could deal with these problems on my own agenda and not have to rely on somebody else. So, which led into investing from there. It's like, oh, you've done it once. Now you can do it at scale. But doing it at scale from such a distance, that is what I don't get. That is what always stumps me. And I think you hit on it a little bit. It's because it was $74K, right? It was affordability to be here.
So there's that piece of it. And I think that's an important piece. Like, I don't want to, underestimate that, because I was 26 years old. I just spent all my money on the house we had in California, despite doing like an FHA type of low down. I still had to replace there were so many things wrong with that house. Like that was an absolute disaster for a lot of reasons, but it got me on the path. So yeah, it was cheap. But the other thing you need to consider is that house we purchased, which was a not a duplex, but had a mother-in-law suite above the garage. We bought it for $648,000, and we ended up having to invest probably another $50 into it. So we were all into it for $700,000, let's say, for the sake of conversation. That place would probably rent out between both sides at most $4,000. I think that's a little high. And so that rent to value ratio just wasn't there. And there was no way to actually cash flow on one of those things like you could here in the Indy market or any of the Midwest markets, where at that point in time, that rent to value ratio was sitting closer to that 1% rule. And so I was buying that $74,000 house. I think it rented for $700 or $750 when I bought it, and immediately cash flowed on that sucker. So there was that factor as well.
And more importantly, to me, the appreciation was greater in Indy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'd be curious to see if you compared the two houses side by side, which one has gained more in equity, the California house or the Indianapolis house.
From a percentage perspective, I would bet Indy has actually won fairly substantially.
With cash outlay and everything. Yeah. Should be. Well, or else we're all doing something wrong.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right. Yeah. What was it that changed while you were here for those 6 months, kind of picking up the pieces? Your property manager stole your money. You're figuring out your kind of investing strategy in Indianapolis. What changed for you from this is a short-term thing visiting Indy to this could be our home?
Yeah.
Like, what was it? What were the 1 to 2 to 3 things that you're like, I really like this life here?
Yeah, there are about a million things I love about Indy, and there are a million reasons why I'll never go back. When we first moved here, we were actually staying in an Airbnb just off of like Keystone area, and it was fine. I think it was totally a fine place to stay for about a month. This was while we were purchasing actually another house hack that we did in Fishers. It was 2 houses on one lot, really cool property. But it was once we got there into Fishers, into that property where we had 3 acres. And just absolutely incredible having the space.
Yeah.
There was something about just having square footage that, like, all right, I can like spread out a little bit. Like California, I always felt like I was, all jammed up and everybody was right up against each other. The other thing that I'd say that was really a standout thing for us was, and we took COVID very, very seriously during that time. My wife is severely asthmatic. And so that was one of the reasons why we moved out here, because we weren't going to see friends. We weren't going to see people anyway because of how seriously we were taking it until we were vaccinated. And we had an issue here because everybody was so darn nice. Like, my wife would go to the grocery store all masked up and ready to go, and she'd get out to the car and people would be coming out trying to help her load the car. It's that Midwest Midwest sensibility, Midwest charm. And
which I know you well, like that's more like you.
Yeah,
like, you're way too nice. Even for Indy, you're so nice. You'll give your time to anyone and everyone. And that's not a California thing.
Oh my God, no. It's not a California thing. And so everything felt a little bit slower. It felt a little bit more like, hey, you get to know your neighbors, you look out for each other. And there's something that, and maybe it's a Hamilton County thing. I don't spend as much time actually in Indianapolis as I probably should. But like, when I'm out walking the dogs, when I'm walking my kid, everybody waves at you. If they're driving by, they wave at you. It doesn't matter. Like, if you've never seen that person, and there's something to that. And then I do think that there's also just a ton of opportunity here on top of all that. It feels a little less overrun. It feels a little less overcrowded to have an opportunity to start something and to grow something.
The stat I like to pull from is we're the fastest by growth rate city growing in the Midwest.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're like the 20th most affordable within the top 20 most affordable metros.
Yeah.
So like the way our mentor Rex kind of frames it is like we punch above our weight class. Like it's like you think like Austin and Nashville, well, they punch above their weight class with regards to the United States in terms of tons of California transplants going there.
Yeah.
But locally, regionally, Indianapolis punches above its weight class. I have friends of mine that literally live in California that I went to college with who are like, I will never be able to own a home.
Yeah.
They fantasize about moving to Indy.
Yeah.
In fact, many of them will travel and like pass by and they want to see homes and try it on, which kind of bugs me because like I know they're not actually going to buy something because they like the life in California.
Yeah.
But they are like, my future is so like barricaded.
Yeah.
With regards to, finances.
Yeah, you just said something that was really interesting, and it really took a while to explain it to our parents why we moved out here. But my parents weren't well off when I was a young kid. Neither, I think Diane's parents were probably a little bit better off, but they were able to build one heck of a life in California. They bought their first house in California in 1996 for, I think it was like $250,000, $300,000, and like that house is now worth $2 million. Like it's absolutely silly what has happened. And so we looked at the lives we had growing up, and we knew that we wanted a child. We knew we wanted our daughter, and we didn't see a path to giving our daughter the same lives that we had growing up. And so when we moved out here, we saw that path. We saw that, hell, we might actually be able to make a better life. We live in an area that has the top 5 best schools in the country. Like we can actually give something really special to our family that we wouldn't have been able to in California.
I feel like, I know you well. I've heard your background and your story many times, and what always sparks in my head is the moment you decided to move here and plant roots in Indy is the second that you started being able to unlock ability to build wealth, which is
wholeheartedly agree.
Wild to me that like
you were a little more on a treadmill before, like maybe making dents in it.
Yeah.
But like witnessing you've created generational wealth, I would presume.
I hope so.
At this point.
Yeah.
Why don't you share a little bit about your business today? Because I know you have wedding venues, you have Off-Leash. Like share a little bit about where you're at today and where you're going.
Yeah. So at any given point in time, I've got somewhere between 60 and 70 rentals. That number does tend to change by the week or so, but it tends to hover in that number. A couple years ago, actually in 2022, when I left Facebook, I began doing a whole lot more flipping. I had an opportunity to sell a decent chunk of my portfolio and did that and ended up buying, like you were indicating, a wedding venue down in Bloomington, the Wilds wedding venue for anybody who's local and is looking to get married. I don't think there's a nicer one out there. And did that. And what I've continued to find throughout my life is that I just go and I find the next great opportunity, and then incredible accidents happen. So like, for instance, when I sold that chunk of my portfolio, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was not looking for a wedding venue. I saw that I needed to spend north of $3 million based on my 1031 exchange. Which is a tax-free exchange with a whole lot of rules. Talk to your accountant before attempting it yourself. So I just went on Zillow because I didn't want to go buy 15 crappy houses and fix them up. I was like, that's just going to be so much work to get done in the time frame. So I just was like, all right, I'll just find an apartment building. And I just went on Zillow and put the minimum up and stumbled across this incredible wedding venue.
You bought the wedding venue off of Zillow?
100% off Zillow. Yes, that's where I first saw it. My agent,
there are good deals on the market.
My agent made out like a freaking bandit in that I found that one, and then he.
So I've been to the Wilds. I'm familiar with the Wilds, and the view where you get married is absolutely astonishing.
Yeah.
Are they selling it as a house?
No, they were selling it as a wedding venue, but it did have the 2 attached houses as well.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a weird transaction. It should not have been on Zillow.
I was going to say I was trying to rationalize, but I forgot that there's the STRs up front, right?
One of them's an STR.
Okay,
yeah.
that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Can we go back to something you said about where you're at now that I've been hyper curious about? I have, I think, 6 rentals, and right now I don't draw any of it to pay for groceries or living expenses. Yeah. Like it's all saving up, I feel like, for like the next roof or the next calamity that's going to strike.
Smart play.
Smart saying is you can't buy groceries with equity. Yeah.
Like it's the equity's been great. We're talking 20% annualized growth. Like when I look at it, however, you have 60 to 70 rentals. Are you like essentially printing money that you're using to live off of? Is that all reinvested?
I've never
Is
taken
that
a
neutral?
dollar. I've never taken a dollar. Thankfully, I've been well employed throughout my entire career. My wife is well employed, so that's a super privileged thing to say. But yeah, I've been rolling it forward into the next opportunity, rolling it into the next flip, and all of that. And so no, I actually haven't taken a single dollar out of my rental portfolio.
Do you know off the top of your head your average home value?
It's somewhere between 100 and 200, somewhere in that range. I'd say probably about 145 if I had to guess.
Have those continued to increase over the time? Not just because of natural appreciation. We're only talking about 2 years, so there's not a ton of natural appreciation, but just as you roll it forward, are you selling one's worth 120, getting rid of that one, replacing it with 180?
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up. I'm actually trying to do away with my lower end units on a regular basis. I used to write down on a daily basis that I wanted 1,000 doors. Like that was something that was really important to me. And what is
the vanity metric?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Total vanity metric. And that was a waste of time. That was a mistake. Because I thought that the door count was what was important, but what actually is important is the return on your time invested, at least for me. I value the return on my time invested much more than the return on investment. And so those lower end
because
units,
your time is more valuable. Like it's increasingly more valuable. Spending time calling a contractor you're losing money.
It sucks. Yeah. It's
also running and chasing after rent checks.
Yeah.
And getting calls that a brick's been thrown through your window while you're on paternity leave with your wife.
That's never happened,
personal
right?
experience.
Yeah.
Never happened. Currently not dealing with that.
As you've gotten into better properties that are worth more, has your cash flow taken a hit?
Yeah, absolutely. In some ways, but then there are alternative ways to make more money on those things. So like, for instance, we just launched an Airbnb, another Airbnb. Those things crush for me from a cash flow perspective. And if you build systems enough in place, you can do it with management, without management. But your cash flow, we've got one that just appraised for $340 that pulls in north of $5,000 a month. We got another one that's probably similar price point and similar rent. We got one down in Bates Hendricks that's doing similar. So you can significantly outperform those rent to value ratios. I think where people struggle is on the low end Airbnbs. You don't tend to actually get the same kind of rent to value that you will on the higher end. So I think that's an opportunity. The other opportunities are turning that equity into we now have 2 wedding venues. So we bought a second one and we're utilizing all those same systems to grow and continue to employ more people and throw a whole lot more awesome parties.
Yeah, selfishly, I want to know more about the wedding venue business in general.
Yeah.
That was my wife's goal, was to own a wedding venue. Like when she went to college, that's what she went for event management tourism, wanted to be able to own a wedding venue. And then we, fast forward, she gets out of college and we go, how do we even buy a wedding venue?
It's hard.
It's just so saturated for me when I look at Indiana. Like if you look up wedding venue in Indiana, there are so many. How do you stay competitive in that marketplace? And how do those perform, if you know it all, or do you just have business management running it and you're kind of removed and just see the reports?
No, I definitely don't just see the reports. I'm not a part of any of the individual weddings anymore. That hasn't been something I've done for over a year now, which is something I'm really lucky.
You're not passing out the flowers.
No. So one of the rules,
stand-in best man.
Yeah. Funny you say it. I have officiated a wedding at the Wilds, but I have not. Wow. I haven't had
rent to best man.
Yeah, rent. You can rent me. I'm not that expensive. But one of the things my wife said when I came home and I told her, hey, I think we're going to buy a wedding venue. She just looks at me. She kind of, put her head down, shook her head, and she goes, okay, I trust you, but you can't talk to any of the brides.
That's what she's thinking about.
She's just like, I know that you're going to think that their problems are too small and all that. So thankfully,
she just puts her head down. I can just only
she's
imagine.
like, oh my God, this
guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, also, like, I know nothing about wedding. She did look at me, and the other thing she said is, you were barely involved in your own wedding. What are you doing? And so I'm really, really incredibly blessed. I have 3 full-timers who work for me at the Wilds and Laurel Mill who are absolutely incredible. Like, I don't need to manage them on a day-to-day basis. They know what they need to do, and they go and they execute at a high level. Where I add values from the business perspective, I go look at the new opportunities. I help to focus them from a resourcing perspective. But I think my involvement with the wedding venues is maybe 4 or 5 hours a week. So pretty darn light, given the fact that I think we're going to do about 150 weddings this next year. So really lucky, you know, we've got liquor, we've got probably 25 part-timers who work for us. So
I'm doing quick math between, if you're doing weddings on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you have
sometimes
2
Mondays, sometimes Thursdays. Yeah.
Yeah. You're running 2 to 3 weddings a
Most
week
weekends.
at each, or 2 to 3 at each venue a week, or between the 2?
No, I'm saying between the 2, we're going to do 150.
Okay.
So, you know, we've had a couple 6, 7 weekend weddings or wedding weekends.
So I have to ask then, if you have a full-time person who I know you've shared this, they're paid pretty well.
Yeah.
Does it, what does that P&L statement look like for you? Like, is it profitable or is it,
Yeah, it's profitable. Now we do have quite a bit of debt on it because, you know, they were big purchases, but yeah, they're definitely quite profitable for us. You know, our expense ratio, it's funny. I was talking to somebody about this today, sits at about 55% before we end up paying the ownership.
Wow.
And debt and all that.
Just knowing I know some about that industry just from her experience going and working places. That's really cool. That to me is, I like finding the unique. I see a lot of real estate investors that don't just own real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, I own a GNC and then have roots in just different companies that are evolving the wedding venue. That's I think we need to buy a wedding venue. You need to let me in on the next one.
All right. Hey, funny enough, I had an inside track, but I decided to pass on it. And, you know, and maybe that's something that might be interesting to everybody, but I've really gotten to the point now where I have more opportunities come into my world than I have capacity to do it. You know, my time is my number one most constrained resource by a mile. And I'm not willing to, you know, rob my family. I'm not really willing to rob my daughter from my time to go and pursue new opportunities in a lot of situations. So I'm kind of in the mentality that if it's not a hell yes, it's a no at this point in time. And really, actually on a third venue that would have been a lot more work, a lot more to go into it, I ended up passing on that opportunity simply because it wasn't a hell yeah.
Where do those habits get created?
What habits?
Knowing when to say no. The habit, I think saying no should be a habit.
Yeah.
And knowing when it's a hell yeah. Is that all gut?
No, it's usually my wife. I wish I could take the credit, but if she tells me, like, is that your one thing? Is that your big thing? Is that your big rock that you're going to move today? That's usually an indication that she's not super excited about it, and that's her way of trying to get me to get to that place. I'm a person who gets excited about stuff very quickly and very easily. And I can, you know, sit down, I can put together that Excel spreadsheet that's going to make it look like the best deal that's ever been done. But then I need a little bit of that realism to bring me back. And so she's an incredible partner for anybody who's out there. Like, I do recommend having a partner, somebody who, if you're the dreamer, have somebody who's kind of the realist that can help ground you a little bit and make sure that you're focusing on the one thing. Because, and we haven't talked about it too much here yet today, but, you know, I started a construction company. I think that could have the opportunity to be the biggest thing I've done by a mile, but it takes so much time, so much attention. And when I lean into it, I see it do really well. And when I pull away, if for whatever reason, I see it struggle. And so, you know, she asked me there in that situation, like, is that going to take away from the construction? I was like, yeah, it will. So that immediately made it a not a hell yeah.
And because she knows exactly how excited you get to wake up in the morning and go work for the construction company.
Yeah.
If it's going to be in the way, get it out of the way. I love that. I think all of us are dreamers sitting at this table.
Oh, yeah.
We all have really, probably should listen to that voice more at home. That doesn't need to see the Excel sheet, just knows, like, instinctively, yep, that's not going to work out.
Well, every yes is a no to something else.
Yeah.
Like,
wholeheartedly in agreement. Yeah. I would have been saying no to spending more time on the construction business. I would have been saying no to all of the people who've partnered with me, all of my employees, all of my, you know, my co-owners of that business. to helping them on certain things. So yeah, I'm wholeheartedly in agreement with that.
Yeah, let's dive deeper into Off-Leash. We spent a lot of time talking about the background and the passive. I would love to understand more of Off-Leash's vision. How, like, what excites you? What's the mission with Off-Leash besides building the biggest construction company? Like, actually, the work that Off-Leash does is what I'm curious on.
Yeah. So Off-Leash is another accidental business that I think is pretty darn cool. When I went full time in 2022 to real estate, I realized that contractors really suck. They were unreliable, similar to my property manager. Oftentimes they'll steal, they're over budget, over time, all that stuff. And I found one good contractor who was good on his budgets. He did great work. He wasn't great on the timing. That's still something that I think is an opportunity, but his name's Paul, and he came, and I convinced him that he should just come and work for me as a project manager. And at that point in time, I was doing 10 to 12 flips at a time. I said, all right, Paul, like, just go around, yell at the contractors, just go be present and make sure these projects get done on time, on budget. And they started doing really well. And I'm the most micro of micro celebrities within the small, crazy niche of out-of-state investor community for Indianapolis. And once that started happening, all my friends started asking, well, can Paul project manage for me too? So I say, ding, 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 somebody else is going to pay for Paul's salary. This is a great opportunity. What I didn't realize is just how much more seriously I was going to take somebody else's project than my own. I didn't realize.
I'm watching that happen with a separate client right now.
Yeah.
Who's done 10 to 12 flips this year,
Yeah.
starting to lean into the project management.
Yeah.
And watching I'm seeing the final product compared to listing the ones that he's helping others on.
Yeah.
And I was like, why haven't we been doing this the past year? This thing's so much easier to sell.
Yeah.
And it's that.
Yeah.
What you just said, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, we took it seriously, but when you're a project manager, you don't actually have enough margin in those situations to take it on the chin when a contractor goes bad. There's just not enough. The 10% doesn't cover the salaries plus the risk factor.
Right.
So just over a year ago, we decided we were going to GC everything ourselves, general contracted all ourselves. There's a little bit more margin in there for us to do that. And it's been good for us. It's allowed us to grow. We started doing maintenance for different people, different property managers around the area. So we actually started hiring W-2 employees. And so what initially started as 100% subcontracting everything out, we're now getting to the point where I think we're about 30% in-house, which I'm so thrilled to say. And we're continuing to grow that side of things because, again, you get to up the quality that you do. You get to be more price competitive in a lot of situations. You get to control when projects actually get done. It's a very different type of way of running a business, and it's probably a lot harder. But getting back to your question, like, what's the mission? We want to help people stop getting screwed over by bad contractors, and we're going to make mistakes. I promise the world that Off-Leash is going to make mistakes, but we promise to actually back ourselves and back up the clients when that happens. Whether that's an investor, whether that's a retail client, whether that's a tenant. The number of times that we've had to protect tenants from bad owners has been quite high. So our objective is to essentially make incredibly safe, nice homes for people to live. And we've been really lucky to have that opportunity to do it so far.
I think you and I share a common interest in our favorite introduction to somebody, which it's our favorite, but also our least favorite. It's when somebody's come to us with pain because they've gotten screwed over.
Yeah.
Help me fix this
so
that doesn't happen. And the reason why I say that it's our favorite client is because from that point forward, they know that if we do a good job on this one, they trust us forever.
Yeah.
And that is like, we can get over that hurdle of them thinking that we're screwing them over.
Yeah.
Because they have firsthand experience of being screwed over.
Absolutely.
It's my least favorite because the way they had to meet us is they had to have a bad day.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say it was uncommon, but I would say about a third of the jobs on our board today are somebody who, in some cases, they came to us and they decided not to work with us because we were too expensive. They went with somebody cheaper, ended up getting screwed over, came back to us. Or, hey, they found us after working with somebody bad. But yeah, literally north of $1 million worth of business on our board today is simply just winning from other bad contractors, from those other terrible situations. And I've always I love to have the opportunity to save them, like you were saying, in those situations. But it's one of the worst things in the world, knowing just how much money has been lost and has gone up somebody's nose, or has funded some great parties.
Well,
Yeah.
and firsthand, the biggest struggle I think contractors have is they don't do what they said they would do. They overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the competitive advantage that you guys are really directly addressing,
Yeah.
which is that issue of communication, I honestly think.
Yeah.
And the standard of more like white collar service in a blue collar industry, which is glaringly absent, I think, nationwide.
Yeah.
And I mean, I felt that. I do want to kind of switch gears though.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people listening will be like, that's really amazing what Nick has built, but I'm here. I have some money in my
How do I
IRA.
get to 60
I have some money in my
Yeah.
SoFi money market. I maybe have one rental, two rentals. I have a very specific question to you, which applies to me selfishly, which is, let's just say you had like 50,000 in a bank account. Maybe you live in Silicon Valley. Maybe you live in Carmel, Indiana.
Yeah.
And you're listening to this podcast. You're listening to Bigger Pockets, whatever. How would you get started?
Yeah.
What would you do?
I'd call Tyler Lingle, and I would find a house hack as many times as you can do that, once a year, until you decide that you've got a family and you don't want to house hack anymore, or whatever that looks like. I would house hack every single year. I think that's the single greatest ROI type of opportunity that you can have. Pretty high ROTI as well, return on time invested. So I would say that if that's what you're looking to do, fantastic. Like, go for it, run it, do it.
And that 50K for step one being to house hack. I mean, you can get
a lot of house.
place.
Well,
You can get
15K is like the starting. Like, if you have 15K, you can go get a house hack.
Yeah.
300K, 3.5% down. Like, it's possible.
And
Yeah.
a $300,000 house can be really, really nice, depending
Yeah.
on how you want to house hack it. I think my house hack in Fishers we bought it for $300,000. So now, granted, that was 4 years ago, so I know the market has shifted, but
You don't even need a duplex. Roommate situation works. That's how Tyler and I got started. I like the approach of house hack. I'm going to take it one level up
yeah,
and go more towards probably where Tyler's at, and where I think a lot of viewers will be at, because we've taken polls at our masterclass of like, how many houses do people own? And the average is like 2 to 3.
Yeah.
And it was that scalability of, okay, in 2025, I'm going to invest $50,000 into real estate, and my goal is to increase wealth and to take that next level up. Maybe not necessarily cash flow. So if that's increasing doors, what would you do? How would you approach it?
all right. If house hacking is off the table, and what I'm looking to do,
Well, you already have the house hack.
Okay.
You've got 3 doors.
All
at
right,
50K.
perfect. So I think the direction I'd go is, one, you want to be a lot smarter than I was when I started doing this. You want to network with everybody that you possibly can. There are a lot of reasons for that. First is you're going to meet people who are in your field, which will give you a ton more perspective on what works, what's not working for them. When you're just starting out, just reading it on biggerpockets.com, or reading a couple of, or watching some YouTube videos or whatever, that's going to be nothing by comparison to networking. Whether that's the Roots events, whether it's Cyria, doesn't matter, but like, get involved in your local community to really understand it. That's going to be step one.
So sign up for the next masterclass in the description below.
Yeah, absolutely. The next thing that I would say from that perspective is talk about what you're doing with everybody in your world. I'm not even talking about people that are within the real estate world, but I would talk to your friends, your family about what you're doing, because real estate's sexy, guys. Like, most people own, if they're lucky, they own the house that they live in. They might own one house that they moved out of, if they're like inherited or something, but like, very few people own 2, 3, 4, 10 properties. And so you doing this is a really cool thing that most people can't really conceive of. They just know throwing their money on the stock market. So talking about it has a lot of advantages. First, a lot of people want to get involved. You might be able to turn that $50,000 into a whole lot more from a private money perspective. You might be able to get them to be an equity partner with you, or a debt partner with you on something. But just talking about it and not asking for anything, just talking about what you're doing, the amount of private money out there is extremely, extremely high. You just need to unlock it in your world. And then the third thing I'd say is value add real estate. I would say going and finding that ugly house. You can go buy, with that $50,000, you can probably go buy between $200,000 and $300,000 worth of real estate in that ballpark if you just buy it as a finished product. If you instead decide to go do the burr strategy, if you decide to go flip with that money, I think you can do a whole lot better. You can go out and buy the $100,000 house that you go sink $50,000, $60,000 into, then it's worth $200,000 on the back end. You can then make the decision whether you're going to refinance it or list it with Max and get that thing sold off and use that cash to go and do it again. And so I think finding those opportunities to essentially find an arbitrage play, and fundamentally what we're talking about here is it's an arbitrage between the purchase price plus the cost of the renovation and what that after repair value is.
And if you're really good at it, you don't even have to renovate the place. You can just stick it on the market like Nick does.
Occasionally I get lucky and I find an off-market deal that I pass on to you guys, and then you guys help me sell. So yeah, there are definitely opportunities to do that.
And you would recommend that to someone in Silicon Valley?
I would, but you're going to need a great partner in order to do it. Or if someone thinks that that's a little too risky, and I do think it's hard to do that from a distance. It's hard to identify enough deals to and get your contractor.
I see about 50% success rate with value adds from out of state.
Yeah, just because of the attention rate. I mean, it's the. I think you just alluded to something that I've never unlocked in my brain, and I'll probably regret saying this, but the difference is not going at it yourself, having a partner that is boots on the ground. That probably is a deeper relationship than an agent or a contractor partner. It's like an actual, we're doing this together.
I could see that.
And whether that's
they should just be the money. If I firmly believe if you're working for Meta and you're making buku bucks,
yeah.
I'm sorry, don't go GC a flip in Indianapolis.
Oh, no.
I believe that's a terrible idea. That's how we get into situations where we list them. They have a hard money note due and they're frantic. We do that all the time. Really, they should partner with someone like you who can GC it well, but maybe even it's finding someone that's already doing it that needs to raise private money and then do note investing.
Yeah.
Like you can get a big ball of money, $300K, and make it $600K in like 2 to 3 years.
Or even just be the money partner and let them use their experience. Like for me, I would rather do that on a lot of the out-of-state flips that I've represented in the past 18 months. If I was the equity partner on it, I feel like the experience, everybody would have made more money.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Because I'm not getting paid to check in on it constantly.
Yeah.
Off-Leash is doing their thing and doing stuff really well, but also I know how much more rocket fuel I can put behind Off-Leash.
So we're going to pilot a equity agent deal.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people have asked. It's just been too messy for me to want to do yet.
Right. That's why I said I'll probably regret saying the sleep deprivation. No, that's really interesting. I have to ask though, you had a bad experience from out of state.
Yeah.
And if you are going to do this from out of state, you're going to add value in real estate. What are the alarming signs people should look for?
Yeah. Bad communication is the number one thing. When the communication stops, that's when you know you're in trouble. Consistently, whether that's an agent, whether that's a property manager, whether that's a contractor, you need regular planned communication. And now, shooting your contractor a text and expecting him to respond in 15 minutes, unfair expectation. Hell, I can't even reply to Tyler that fast when he texts me. And oftentimes takes me
client.
Yeah, I think oftentimes it takes us days to get back to each other. But like having some way of checking in on a regular basis, making sure that when you're going to get communication from these people and them hitting those dates is going to be key. So you alluded to a couple of important things. Yeah, I got screwed. I still won in the grand scheme of things. I didn't need to move out here for that. It was a happy opportunity that I did that, and I was lucky. Coincidence or accident that got me out here. But what I think people need to do is they need to work with grown-ups, especially if they're going to do it from a distance. Going and working with the agent who just decides, hey, I want to start a property management company. I was the idiot who did that. And granted, my portfolio grew substantially because of that, but I also got robbed for 6 figures.
I'm going to start a property management company because I'm not selling enough in real estate.
So there's that piece of it. But I think a lot of agents get into I like the annuity of it. Like I like the consistency where, you guys might sell 4 houses a year. And
in an industry that is going like this, they
They want the consistency. But there are grown-up companies out there. T&H, who I know has been a sponsor at Roots Events, is a grown-up company. They've got systems in place. Intrigue.
You know what to expect from them.
Yeah.
Like they're not fly by night.
Yeah, they've got business processes.
History.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got hundreds and hundreds of doors. It's probably a good sign that you're going to be well taken care of.
Yeah.
Same thing with a contractor. If it's just a guy in a truck, you're probably in trouble. If it's,
in a truck.
Yeah.
Or if it's
much.
an agent that's a project manager just trying to make consistent income as well.
If your agent's doing it all, that must mean they're not great at any one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, to be honest.
Yeah,
That's true.
Absolutely.
If you're splitting your time in all directions, you're not giving enough time to any
They
direction.
can't possibly be an expert in all of them.
Yeah.
It's just not physically possible.
That's why I get asked, the number one question I get asked is, why don't we have a property management?
I think I've asked you that question.
Yeah, you've actually tried to push us into property management, get into the deep end and go.
Yeah.
The reason we don't is because it hasn't been a necessity for us personally.
Yeah.
We don't have our doors at a property manager. We have in-house management, but it's not a large enough necessity to have an engine behind it.
Fair.
So when we do launch it, it's going to be because there's collectively, 30 to 40 doors that are under our roof and have been for a while. And we have enough people in that direction that it's okay, like you did, you built Off-Leash out of necessity.
Yeah.
You had enough business going on to pay Paul, and then other people brought you money, and that's where it scaled. That'll happen for us naturally with property management. And that is also how T&H started.
Yeah.
That's also how a lot of other really, really good property management companies have started in Indy, is out of necessity. It's their own personal doors from an investment perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally tangented from the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Man, we have covered a lot. I hope people can follow this through line. We could talk for days and days, and we'll definitely have you back. We do have some last second questions for you.
A little bit of rapid fire speed round questions.
Incredibly important question coming at you, which is, what is your favorite dinner place in Indy?
Oh, that is a hard one. All right. So, Root and Bone there in the Broad Ripple area. Awesome. I think they've got the single best fried chicken in all of Indy, and that includes the Eagle. The Eagle's trash by comparison. That said, I do have to say Anthony's up in Carmel is if you're gonna go for that upscale meal.
I was waiting for you to say a Carmel restaurant.
Yeah,
I know this guy is.
I gotta rep both sides, but it's between Root and Bone and Anthony's, I'd say.
For those that don't know, Nick lives in the let's just call it the bougie part of town, Carmel.
Yeah.
That's what all the rest of us hate. Just kidding.
Yeah, it's fair.
He probably called it Carmel when he lived.
I did call it Carmel when I moved out here.
All the out-of-state investors moving here are gonna move to Carmel.
Yeah,
can guarantee.
What's the number one habit that has led to your success?
Yeah, get up before everyone else. Get up and take control of your day. I know it's probably one of the most over talked about types of answers to this question, but I'm up at 5:15 every single day. Doesn't matter what happened the night before. I'm up at 5:15. I get up, write out what my goals are for the day, what I'm thankful for, get a workout, and then I go and spend time with my family and let the day come to me after that point. But I prioritize me before I prioritize the world, and I think that's really important for everybody.
I know he's about to fire the next question. You take every Wednesday off.
Oh yeah.
Elaborate.
So every Wednesday I'm a serial entrepreneur, as you guys have heard. I've got a lot of different things going on.
So this guy had a crazy fever, super sick, the most sick I've ever heard him. And he said the words, "I'm an entrepreneur. I'm still working today," back to me. And I'm like, dude, go home and take a nap.
I've been guilty of that before, but so I tend to work a lot of nights. I tend to work a lot of weekends. And so one of the things I made a decision, and nobody believed me that I'd actually do it, including my wife, my mom. But before my daughter was born, I said, I'm going to take every Wednesday and I'm going to go spend that time with her. There was an old blog called Waffles on Wednesday, which was a fire type of podcast. And I loved the concept of, why can't we have waffles on Wednesday? It's the kind of thing that you only do on the weekend. Why not waffles on Wednesday? So every Wednesday is our Bailey day, and the two of us go and we play at the play gym and just spend time together, because I know that I only have 18 years of her being in the house, and I'm going to enjoy every single one of them.
Yeah, I love that. My son's 5 weeks old now.
Are you going to take Wednesdays?
No, I'm going to take the month of October off, which is the same equivalent.
I love that. I love that.
I didn't know that.
Is this news?
That's
Yeah.
news to me.
I haven't brought that to him yet.
Maybe TF. Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Call me in
No, I'm
October.
joking. I love that. Last question for you. What is an area of life you're currently working on growing?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'm kind of one of those all-in people. And so right now, Off-Leash Construction has gotten a little bit of everything. I've been lucky enough that I've been able to build the habits around my health. I could probably drink a little bit less, very transparently. But right now, I'm leaning into to creating the best opportunity for all of our employees at Off-Leash. Like that is what I am really focusing on, because I think this could be a 100-year business if I do my job right. And but that only happens by treating everyone incredibly well today, making an incredible place to work that then they go and deliver for our clients. So that I would say is my number one focus.
We'd love to be right there with you. I mean, our goal with Roots is to be the real estate side, and you guys over there on the contracting side to be there for 100 years. I mean, that's so rare in our industry. Like there's a lot that pop off for like 5 years and they disappear.
Yeah, completely like evaporate.
Yeah.
They're just bought up.
That's the norm.
Yeah, no, I love that. Where can people reach you or find you?
Yeah, best way to get in touch is at Off-Leash Construction on Instagram, or if they want to email me, Nick at Off-Leash Construction. The other thing I'll just say, it's fun. Anybody who's local, I put this out there. It's drinkswithoffleash.com. You can get on our calendar and have a drink up at the Speakeasy or the Water Bowl up in Carmel. So you got to drive up to the north side, but I promise I will pour good stuff for you.
We'll make sure to put that in the description. Thank you guys for watching this episode of the Roots podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe, drop a comment, DM us your next real estate deal on Instagram, and we'll judge it on here in an upcoming episode. So look forward to seeing you guys at the next Indy Investor Masterclass. Link is in the description below. Peace.
Peace.